Hello and good afternoon to all our viewers at the session 7, which is the services and solutions for the vertical farming sector. Let's begin our session by inviting our speaker for the day, the first speaker of the session, Daphne Despoina, who is the Agricultural University of Athens in Aarhus. She is going to enlighten us about the energy efficiency in farming systems related with lighting solutions, a presentation to look up to. Daphne, I would want you to take the stage. Have we lost Daphne on the way? Welcome live, Dr. Eric.
Yes, thank you. Sorry for the, I just rebooted, so here I am. Thank you.
The reboot button always works well. So let's do one thing. I think Daphne is not live at the moment. Since Daphne is working out with her internet connectivity, I would like to invite our next speaker of the 7th session today, Mr. Ralph Weir, who is from the CEO of Zindu Limited. Zindu Limited is the silver sponsor of the Global Vertical Farming Expo 2020. I would request Ralph to take the stage now. The stage is yours.
Yes. Thank you for that introduction. Have I managed to share my screen?
Yes, very clear.
Fantastic. So I'd like to introduce you to Zindu and our Aurora systems, which are all about delivering organic, non-toxic seed health. So we're all about boosting the performance of your seeds in a very friendly way. We're not using any chemicals, we're not using any water, so we're a very water efficient approach, and we're not leaving any residues on the seeds either. What we are doing is we're boosting your germination, we're giving you faster, stronger growth on your crops, and we're also giving you very high levels of disease resilience, which is fantastic, and that gives you confidence in that these strong crops that you're growing will actually make it to harvest. So let's talk a little bit about the key factors that we see in building an effective vertical farm. And these are the obvious ones. These are the physical ones. You know, they're all very, very important. It's the quality of your people. It's the growth media, the water, the sensors, lighting and HVAC. They're all incredibly important. But there is, of course, something missing from the center of this. And it is, of course, the seeds. How you treat your seeds will make a massive difference to the outcomes of your vertical farm, and can be the difference between a successful, viable business and something which is actually a business failure, just simply based on the way the seeds have been treated. To give you some idea of this, the next slide shows 4 seeds, 4 peas in fact. I say they're 4 peas from a pod. They're actually 4 peas from quite a large batch of peas. 2 of them were treated with the Aurora system. Two of them were not. And you can very clearly see the difference between them. So these peas, we've got to assume that they're very similar in terms of their genetic makeup, their health before the treatment. We actually treated many thousands of peas. These were just two from each batch that I picked out to show here. And you can see the treatment has given a vast increase in the root length, the overall biomass that's available from the pea shoot. Generally, a very, very positive outcome for these peas. And that leads us into our philosophy, which is really going back to the health of seeds. The health of our seeds, the way we treat our seeds, is going to define our success in vertical farming. And of course, it's not just about vertical farming, it's any form of farming. The way we treat the seeds defines success. It's perhaps more pronounced in vertical farming because, of course, there are fewer other influences. So doing something beneficial to the seed has a multiplied effect through the vertical farm. So let's start to look at some of the effects that are going on here. One of the really key parameters for any farm is how many of your seeds are actually going to germinate. So here's some spinach seeds. These are commercial grade spinach seeds that came to us a few weeks ago from a commercial vertical farm. And after 6 days, they're getting to 80% germination. So that's pretty good. However, just imagine if you could increase that. You'd buy less seeds, you'd save money on seed purchases. So that would be a fantastic thing if you'd be able to do it. Look at this curve. These are exactly the same seeds. They've just been treated with the Aurora system. The germination rate's gone from about 80% to about 97%. Of course, that's getting to the point where you can't actually improve it for very much more. We're seeing over 20% increase in the germination rate, which means you can spend 20% less on seeds coming into your farm. That's a significant saving. It doesn't stop there. It's 20% saving in labor costs also. And there's 20% less dead space in the farm. So this is a very, very significant thing. Of course, actually, graphs are sometimes difficult to interpret. It's hard to see what they really mean. And sometimes it's better to just go with a picture. So I'm going to show you a picture here. What does this mean to in a more visual way? So Amaranth is a great product, a great crop in baby leaf salads. 5 days after planting, this is what it looks like. That's untreated, and you can see that the seedlings are starting to come up. The treated seeds at exactly the same day look like this. You can see many, many, many more seedlings have come up. It's growing much more strongly, much more rapidly. And not only is it more seedlings, there's something else. You'll notice how much bigger the seedlings are. Even the biggest one in the untreated tray is below average in the plasma treated tray. So this is a very significant gain for you. So taking that and showing it in a slightly different way. Again, these graphs don't show everything. Let's look at the graph again. Look at the point that we hit 80% germination. 6 days. But the treated seeds hit that same point 2.5 days earlier. What that equates to is taking a crop that is normally harvested after 21 days and being able to harvest it after 18.5 days. That means instead of 17 crops per year, you're getting 19 crops per year. That's 10, 15% more productivity from your farm. That's 10 or 15% more from your investment from the same asset. We have the same costs for the HVAC, same costs for the lighting. So it's not just 10 or 15% more, it's 10 or 15% more on the top line. and you are getting a lot more out of your system at this point. So a quick resume of what we've done so far. We've boosted germination rate, we've boosted production, and here's a nice clear image of it. These are going back to the pea seeds. The tray on the left, untreated. The tray on the right have been treated with Aurora. And you can see the significant difference in the growth between the two. But there's something else going on here, and you can see it just starting to appear in the untreated seeds. That central one, you might just be able to see some white fluff appearing around the base of that central untreated pea shoot. Let me show you a picture from a different angle. Now these are seeds that have all been planted out at the same time. You can see the difference in growth, but you can also see the difference in the pathogen load. In growing these forwards, we lost most of the trays of the untreated seeds, if the truth be known. We didn't lose anything from the plasma-treated seeds. In fact, when we analyse pea seeds coming to us, something like 60 to 70% of pea seeds carry some form of fungus. Once they've been treated through Aurora, none of them have any fungal pathogens on. So you're going to avoid the disease losses. Now, putting that into perspective, an earlier speaker said that disease losses can run from between 5% up to something like 30% of your productivity being lost through disease. So imagine if you could eliminate those losses. It's a fantastic benefit for a vertical farm. Quick summary, we're giving more germination, going back to the Amaranth picture, faster, stronger seedlings, more harvests, more production, and that's the peas. And again, the peas, no pathogens, no disease loss, and more resilient production. So you're much more confident that not only are you getting more out of the farm, more of it will be able to go to market as produce. So what does this actually look like? Well, if you're familiar with the priming and treatment drums that are used in seed processing, it will look quite familiar. We put seeds into a drum with fresh air. Everything is done at room temperature and at ambient air pressure, and we turn plasma on. We create a plasma within the drum, which creates what we call activated air. It's a high energy form of air. It's got very strong disinfection capabilities. I'll show you a little bit of its makeup in a moment, but it's something that we have to control very, very precisely because we are fine-tuning the makeup of that activated air between what we're doing to the oxygen and what we're doing to the nitrogen that's in the air. So a lot of process control to make sure that we're doing a good process to the seeds. And here's the really beautiful part, is at the end of the process, the activated air is quenched back to normal air. So it just turns itself back into the normal air that we breathe. That means that even if you took the seeds straight out of the drum with the activated air and bagged them immediately, there would still be no residues left in the seeds. What we actually do is we go through a venting cycle, we quench the air, and we do that in a very safe way. But if there's a power cut, if there's a power failure, you can be sure that the activated air will actually just degenerate. It just becomes normal, standard air, and there's no chance of there being any chemical leakage or chemical residues. Here's another little view of what is going on. In many cases, you'll have heard of ultraviolet being used to treat seeds. The problem with ultraviolet, of course, is it's very effective on the surfaces it can see, it doesn't get into crevices, and it doesn't get around the back of a seed. So ultraviolet is a useful approach. And in fact, when we create plasma, we create an element of ultraviolet. But you see there's various variants of oxygen appearing, things like ozone, which is, actually it's there as O3, a rearranged form of the oxygen molecule. O4, we actually create O5 and O6 as well, and atomic oxygen, just O. We're used to oxygen being O2. These are other variant forms of oxygen, which have very, very short lives, and which are devastatingly effective against pathogens. But you also see there are various nitrates forming around the seed, and these are helping us boost the health of the seed. So we're killing pathogens, and at the same time we're doing nitrate fixation and boosting the overall germination and growth of the seed as it grows into a seedling. In terms of the systems that we offer, we have the Z10 system, which is suitable for most small farms. Then we have the Z10 Mini, and this is intended for processing very high value seeds. It's actually an attachment that goes onto the Z10, which subdivides the system so it can process up to 9 different crops at the same time, but in much, much smaller quantities. Perhaps only 20 or 30 grams of each seed at a time. Very effective for tomatoes, peppers, the higher value seeds. Of course, many farmers want to go in the other direction, not the high value seeds, but processing higher densities or higher quantities. And for those, we have the Z100, and we are moving up to the Z600, a 600 litre machine, which will be coming in 2022. So a range of systems covering all aspects of farms. I hope at this point, if you're involved in vertical farming, you can see the benefits of the Aurora system, and you'll be wanting to engage and to evaluate. So here we have the trials program. We make a nominal charge to cover costs and shipping, but ship us some seeds, we will process them, and we'll test what the bacterial load, what the fungal loads were before and after. And that's what these images are. The round dishes are showing us the bacterial levels of infection of various seeds. The square plates are actually, I can't tell if those are lupins or peas, but looking at the fungal infections on the seeds. So different ways of testing for bacteria and fungus. We'll also look at germination rate and speed, and we'll ship the seeds that haven't been used for this analysis back to you, and you'll be able to then run them through the farm and gauge for yourself the benefit that this is providing. The next step, of course, is then to get a machine on site for extended trials. And please do talk to us about this option, because we think it's absolutely the best way forwards. It does really require a commitment to field trialing the system properly and sharing some data with us to help us to optimize the systems for the environment you're operating in, the specific seeds that you're working with, perhaps the specific pathogens that you're dealing with, to make sure that we are killing off any of the nasties that might be on the seeds that are coming into you. So in summary, Aurora is very much a step change for the whole of the agri-tech industry, but of course, with the very fast growing cycles and the cleanliness that is possible in a vertical farm, some of these benefits are much of very, very significant value to the vertical farming market. We've got an easy engagement program to demonstrate this capability. So I would love it if you were to get involved. Come and contact us now. Come and visit us on the booth, or contact me after the show. I'd be very glad to provide any more information that you might be interested in. So thank you for your attention. I will stop sharing and hopefully pass it back to Mama.
Yes, thank you so much, Ralph. The presentation was indeed very, very informative. You've shared some very interesting systems in the global vertical farming field about closed plasma treatment and so on. We'll pick up some questions at the end of this session. Once again, I would request the attendees to visit the booth of the silver sponsor Zindu Limited under the booth section. You can network with them as well. Moving forward, I would now like to invite Alice Johnson. She is the Global Director for City Farming, Signify. Signify is our gold sponsor of the Global Vertical Farming Expo 2020, where she's going to highlight some points about the key learning and how to have a successful vertical farming. Over to you, Alice, now.
Okay, thank you. Yes, let me share my screen with you.
Visible.
Okay, it says sharing, so hopefully it's okay with you.
Yes, we are able to see your screen. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for listening. As mentioned, my name is Alice Janssen. I'm responsible as Global Director for the City Farming business of Signify, Horticulture Light Solutions. And today we want to share some of our key learnings in setting up a successful vertical farm. Because we heard from a lot of speakers already that there are different applications quite some systems to set up a vertical farm. So it's not a question whether vertical farmings can be successful. I think it's rather the question how they can be successful. And we've been in this field for over 10 years now, specifically focusing on vertical farming, and in horticulture for over 75 years. So that's quite some experience, and we want to share some of our key learnings. Hopefully they will bring you and your business a bit further. So a small, short explanation of Signify. You might, hopefully you know that Signify is the new name of Philips Lighting. So we used to be Philips Lighting in the past, but since a couple of years, our company name is Signify, but we still have our Philips brand for our lighting products. And these products contains light sources, luminaires, and systems and services. So if you look at Signify, there are a couple of divisions. One of them is our agriculture business, of which horticulture is part. So our horticulture business consists of 4 segments. The biggest one is vegetables and fruits used in greenhouses. Also for floriculture, greenhouses are the main application. But if you look at completely closed systems, often in a multi-layer setup, but not always, that could also be a single layer or dual layer setup, then we call that completely closed system, we call that city farming. And often it's used, it's used in the industry as vertical farming. So that's a segment I'm going to talk about today. And next to that, there is also a segment which focuses on compounds, tissue culture, sports fields, etc. So enough about the company. I think it's important and more important for you to hear what we've learned and done in the past. And I think one of the key learnings is that it's important to integrate climate and lighting systems. We all know that LED lighting or lighting in general is an important big part of the cost of setting up a vertical farm, not only capital expenditure, but also in operating cost using energy. And so is climate. But the interaction between the two is crucial for a plant to grow. And because plants are living objects, it also means that you can, of course, set up a certain climate, set up a certain temperature or humidity. But as plants start growing, then they start using nutrients, they start evaporating. So they interfere with the climate. And it's very important to manage that climate with your lighting. Also because, of course, apart from light, LED lights also give some warmth. So it's important that you understand how it works in order to increase the yield of your vertical farm. And I deliberately started with talking about climate because that's crucial. Of course, lighting, which is our core business and we can talk about for hours, is very important. And it's not just light, it's the right light for the right purpose. And that purpose depends on the crop, but it also depends on the grower. Are they growing for yield? Are they growing for quality? What is the aim they want to achieve with their produce? And how can lighting contribute? And I'll come back later in my presentation, but for sure it's important to understand how you can set the right light settings. And what is a right light setting? Well, that is, as explained by Dr. Leo Marcelis before, it consists of several elements. It's the spectrum, but it's also the light level, it's the day length, for instance. So there are more aspects to lighting than just simple the spectrum of level. And a third point related to integrating climate and lighting is that you also need to look at the right spacing strategy. We have, as city farming team, we have our own Growhuis Research Center in Eindhoven, the Netherlands. There we have 8 climate rooms where we conduct research. And that research is for own use, is for our customers, in order to fix the right growth recipe. And one of these elements of that growth recipe is the spacing strategy. Because in the end, the light the light that is being given should land on the plant and should not land on its environment, because then it's gone. It's maybe reused a bit, but it's not as effective anymore. So it's very important that you have a spacing strategy where you can make use of, where you make the most use of your light plan. And those are things, we always test, and that might make the difference between investing in another respacing robot or just using that investment to do other things to increase the yield. So now I was talking a lot about the grams per micromole of mole given, about increasing yield. And another learning we have is that it's, of course, very important to understand how to grow and to make sure that all the important elements are integrated. But it's even maybe more important to understand what are your customer needs and how can you fine-tune your crops accordingly. I've spoke about yield. Of course, you want to increase yield per square meter as much as possible. But that might not be the only thing. If you remember the talk of Daniele Benetov this morning, it's also about taste. It's about the color. It's about the right mix. And if you know what your customer needs, you can actually start developing a light recipe that is able to stimulate that need. So, for instance, in our research center, we've developed over 150 light recipes. And one of them is aimed at increasing the vitamin C level in arugula. That is done at the end of the growth cycle, not by doing something really extreme, but just changing the light spectrum so that you can trigger the plant to increase its vitamin C level. And that, in the end, that ended up that we had an arugula with a much higher vitamin C level than a kiwi fruit. But it's not only about vitamin C, it is also, for instance, about reducing nitrate in leafy greens. Those who are in contact with retailers know that there are strict limitations and regulations on the residues allowed on a bagged salad. So if you can guarantee that the nitrate level in your leafy greens is below a certain level year-round, then it's a competitive advantage for your produce, for your company. And especially that year-round is important, because we know in summer it's relatively easy to keep below the levels of nitrate in open field. In wintertime, it's much more difficult. So that's, I think, one of the advantages of growing indoors. For us, it's always summer or always spring, depending on what the crop needs. And as mentioned, if you know how a crop grows, it's also very important that you grow it to the max. And if that means that you increase, for instance, the vitamin C level, we know that has a positive effect on shelf life. But there are other light treatments that have a positive effect. And we've investigated several of these treatments. And that is the information, of course, we can share with you when using the lighting. So learning number 2. In view of time, I move on, but any questions, please, hopefully I can answer them at the end of the session. I forgot to show you some nice pictures, sorry. So then the next learning. Learning 1 was about growing and increasing the grams per micromole. The second one was about the quality of your produce. And the third one is about sensors and data. It's been talked about a lot. Artificial intelligence, data, it's all about collecting data, but it's even more about understanding that data and transforming that data into information and knowledge. And that requires, of course, the interference often of our plant specialists that know how to interpret the data. But it's already very important to capture all that data. And it's not about lighting only, it's about the climate, it's about the temperature, it's about the nutrient composition of the water, because all these elements in the end determine the yield. And it's important that we measure along the way what's happening in the system. And on the one hand, that's just to monitor that the system is doing what it's doing, but it's also there so that we can identify anomalies if something is going wrong. And before you maybe see it happening in the plant, it might have been already an issue of the system a bit before. So there is a constant monitoring of all the parameters in a vertical farm via our sensors. And this way, our plant specialists can identify problems upfront, but not only identify problems, we can actually also start predicting growth, start predicting giving a yield forecast. And if you understand exactly what your yields will be for the coming weeks, you can have a good discussion with your customer whether that yield is sufficient or not. Or maybe you should slow down growth a bit because there is less demand, and then you don't need to waste any produce. So it's important that you know how to play with the settings to accommodate the rest of the sales channel. All that can be done by data and captured by sensors. Moving on to the fourth learning, which is really about crops. It took already a while to start talking plants. Normally we start talking about plants right from the beginning of the presentation, because in the end we sell light, but we love plants. That's why we are in this business. And of course, in the past, a lot of microgreens, leafy greens, arugula, baby leaves, herbs have been grown in vertical farms, and they are being sold, I think, worldwide already successfully. But in order to improve the system, to improve the applications, and especially make vertical farms more sustainable for future, is to increase the number and the type of crops you can grow in a vertical farm. So here you see a picture of our tomato cell. It's a small cell where we can do all kinds of variety screenings, productivity tests. And so it's not a multi-layer setup anymore. It's a single layer, not as high as in a greenhouse, but pretty high, and good enough to start testing the right light and growth recipes for indoor farming. And soft foods like tomato are very interesting. Of course, also strawberries. If you look at another one of our other cells, there we have a dedicated strawberry room where we have a specific design, a specific light module for growing strawberries, in order to not only increase the yield per meter, but also increase, of course, its taste and the coloration. And in many countries, people are willing to pay a bit more to have a strawberry throughout the year, or to have a strawberry with a certain taste for special occasions. So looking at a business case, once you figured out how to grow strawberries, I'm quite sure you can make the business case profitable, because consumers are willing to pay a premium price. And for instance, in Japan, where there are several vertical farms using our lighting, that's absolutely one of the crops that's being sold in a very successful way. So strawberries, other kinds of berries, tomatoes, other high wire crops like cucumbers. It's very important that we diversify, not only as lighting supplier, tailoring our lighting solutions to that, but we go beyond. So developing growth recipes, including the climate system, etc. So we've trialed a lot of crops, also ones that worked quite well, but are not economically feasible yet, like melons, but at least we've tried, and there's a lot possible. So that brings me to the final learning, which is in this case learning 5, and that is choose the right sales channel. Because choosing the right sales channel can actually make or break your vertical farm. It's important that you know what your consumers are looking for and how you can reach those consumers, but also what the needs are of your sales channel. Because if shelf life and waste is a very important aspect for them, which often is for retail, looking at sustainability objectives, then a light recipe that actually increases shelf life, increases vitamin C level, can be very interesting. So you can invest a bit more maybe on the installation, but for sure you can close a year-round contract at a nice price. And that in the end is the total picture you need to paint from the system till the sales channel. And often it's not only about trying to grow at the lowest price, because in all honesty, lettuce in a vertical farm is still more expensive often than open field or also coming from high-tech greenhouses, but it's about providing value to your consumers. And often consumers are willing to pay a bit more because it's fresh, because it's local, because it's been produced pesticide free, because it has a great taste, because it's available while it's not the season. There are many reasons and many aspects that have value for a consumer, and you can aim your business case at. And of course, it's a capital intensive industry. And ideally, all our customers have enough capital to build a small R&D setup and extend that one. But there are often, you often need to prove that your system is working, and then you can move on. So it's not bad to start small and see if it works, and then go beyond. The story of Danielle of Planet Farms is a very clear example of that. First, have a very good R&D facility, and then extend to a reference design, a commercial farm, and start replicating. And I think the last one, probably investigated by you, but also very interesting. Of course, retail food service is an interesting market for whole head produce or for bagged salads, etc. But it's also interesting to look at the compounds of certain crops, because they can add value, not to retail, but for instance, to the pharmaceutical industry, or to the beauty industry for fragrances, or for flavor for specific components of other food products. So it goes beyond just full head lettuces. It goes much broader if you look at the portfolio. We try to trial as much as crops as possible. So if you're interested to hear more about how we do that, whether we've trialed certain crops, or if you have any ideas on other potential crops, please reach out. I'll share my contact details in a minute. Just the final summary of my presentation. So learning 1, integrate climate and lighting system. Crucial to make sure the plants grow and they grow in an efficient way. So you increase the grams per micromole of light given. Of course, fine-tune your crops to meet your customers' demands. And that can be all kind of quality elements like taste, flavor, color. Use sensors to monitor your system, but also to start predicting that and take vertical farming to the next level. Extend your portfolio to new crops and build new reference farms on that one. And of course, make sure you stay connected to your sales channel, but also explore other sales channels to see how maybe part of the plant that you are producing can be reused. And I think if you look at the successful farms that are already operating in the world, I hope they have the same learnings. If not, I'm really eager to learn more, and I know for sure that we can give you some advice on these aspects. So for any questions, please reach out. This is my mail address, and of course, visit also the site of Philips. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alice. It was a very interesting presentation that you had put up. Different steps. The stepwise was very, something to look up to for people, the attendees, to understand the basic concept of vertical farming and growing in it. Thank you so much once again. I would like to announce to the attendees that they can put their Q&A questions under the Q&A tab to our participants, to our speakers of the panelists. Once again, Signify is our gold sponsor, and to network with all our sponsors and exhibitors, do visit the booth section on the left side of this platform. Thank you once again. Moving forward, I would now like to invite Dr. Daphne. She will be enlightening us about the energy efficiency in farming systems related with lighting solutions from Agriculture University of Athens and Aarhus University. Over to you, Dr. Daphne.
Hello, thank you
Hello.
very much. Okay, I will share my screen.
Yes.
I assume you see it. Perfect. So, hello everyone. My name is Daphne. I'm a postdoc researcher at Aarhus University and Agricultural University of Athens, and I am here to talk to you, introduce you, and show you how we examined a load-shifted intermittent lighting schedule as a solution for a more flexible and energy-efficient vertical farm. So I'm not going to explain vertical farm concept as I do to most of my presentations, because here you're all experts on that. I'm just going to focus on the importance of light. Light is one of the most important factors for plant growth. Natural outdoor sunlight spans a really wide spectrum from ultraviolet till the infrared light, and has a significant role in the process of photosynthesis, since the higher parts of the plants are able to capture the light energy and synthesize carbohydrates and release oxygen from CO2 and water capture. So during the process of photosynthesis, the chlorophyll pigments particularly absorb light in the red and the blue regions of the visible light spectrum. Years ago, it was believed that light and its three dimensions, light quantity, light quality, and light duration, can only affect one parameter in plants' growth and development. However, the last years, and due to the increasing research and expand in the indoor horticulture, we actually saw that all these dimensions are interconnected with each other and can affect more than one parameters in plant growth and development. At the same time, light is one of the biggest costs inside vertical farms. It consists almost 40% of the total production cost of the vertical farms. And if we see in this graph, figure 5, we can actually see that most of the electricity that we use inside the vertical farms is distributed for the lighting operation. Also, I would like to introduce the Nordic countries, which is the case that we did our research for, which are highly characterized by dark and cold climate conditions, but also with a really high vegetable demand and a really big and expanding organic market the last years. However, Denmark imported on 2018 vegetables that valued 3.5 million euro, and at the same time, 40% of them were wasted at the end of their value chain. Also, Nordic countries have a really big advantage of abundance of renewable energy, mainly due to wind energy. And 60% in Denmark, 60% of the electricity generation is based on renewable energy systems. However, Denmark has one of the most expensive electricity prices in Europe. Also, I would like to mention that in the scope of this research, we wanted to take for our advantage the Nord Pool market. Nord Pool market is a power trading synergy among the Nordic and the Baltic markets between hydro, wind, and thermal power exchanges So what Nord Pool is doing is providing an hourly spot market price, which is available 1 day ahead for Denmark, where the power contracts are traded for the next day's delivery by the TSO, which is EnergyNet for the case of Denmark. So every hour, as we can see in figure 7, we have purchasing and selling curves, which are created, and the crossing point defines which is going to be the spot market price and the volumes that will be traded the following day in an hourly analysis. Figure 8 shows that we have a really big fluctuation in the prices, not only between the different days, but also in the same day between the different hours for the consumers. So what we did is we developed we developed a case model of a vertical farm in Denmark, and then we continued with cash flow models, different cash flow models of equity loan and subsidy prices, so we can test the profitability of the vertical farm, and we saw that for most of the cases, the differences were small, with a wholesale price of 7.37 euro per kilo. And in terms of IRR and MPV, we had an equal payback period of approximately 4 years. I would also like to mention that when the wholesale price was at 6.37 euro per kilo, the business was still viable with a payback period of 6 and 7 years, but not at a lower price. So if the wholesale price was at 5.37 euro per kilo, the business was no longer profitable and the investors will have their money back in 21 years. So then we wanted to test in different experimentation setups how we could actually provide this fluctuating electricity price. So what we did is we developed 3 different experimental protocols and 3 different experimental setups in sequences. We had 3 treatments. In the first one, the control one, we had, for the case of Basel, which was our model plant, 16 hours of light followed by 8 hours of dark. Then in the first stress treatment, we reduced by 2 hours the total photo period, and what we did is we inserted the intermittent lighting schedule, in which we had 4 hours of continuous light, followed by 4 hours of intermittent light, which for each hour of intermittent, we provided 10 minutes of light per dark hour. And this was a really normalized system, which we repeated it for 3 times in a daily basis. However, what we saw from the actual electricity prices, we saw that the prices of electricity tend to be higher from 7 o'clock in the morning till 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then again from 7 o'clock in the evening until 9 o'clock in the evening. So what we did in the last treatment is we mimicked exactly the model of electricity price, so we can see if our plants are going to be stressed by this switch on and off of the lights. And we developed 2 different hypotheses. In the first one, we wanted to see if we will have significant differences in the growth rate of basal plants that grow under continuous and intermittent photoperiods. But in the second one, we wanted to see if we will have differences between a normalized intermittent schedule and a load-shifted intermittent schedule. And in this slide, I'm showing you a little bit our experimental setup. We had 3 identical LED lamps in each chamber that had the same spectrum. We had adjusted a little bit the PPFD, so our daily light integral maintains at 11.5 moles per square meter per day. And the results, we saw that the leaf temperature and the NDVI, the normalized different vegetation index, which is a really important indicator to quantify the amount of a green vegetation in an area, showed no significant differences between the treatments. And really important for us was the photosynthetic efficiency that we measured with a gas exchanger. And we calculated the photosynthetic efficiency, the total average, but also more specifically the photosynthetic efficiency during the 10-minute light intervals of the intermittent light, but also during the full hour of lighting that we were providing. And we saw that during the intermittent light, our plants showed significant differences at day 29 that also affected the total average photosynthetic efficiency. But day 29, we would say that it's also a day that our basil plants could have been harvested from a vertical farm. And then CCI, the chlorophyll content index, that showed no significant differences. And I would like to show a very interesting figure that we calculated the dry biomass production of the shoot. In the 3 treatments, we saw that the 2 of the intermittent were significantly higher compared to the control one, but also at a significantly lower energy demand due to the 2 hours of less photoperiod that we had in a daily basis. So then what we did is the purpose was to develop a model and develop an energy optimization model, more specifically that it is based on the fluctuations of the grid and presents an implementation and communication ability between the grid and the indoor farm. So what we did is we developed and implemented an algorithm that uses a dynamic light provision which is linked to the electricity market price fluctuations, and we combine it with data analysis from plant physiology, morphology, development, and growth rate in order to develop a system that the lamps switch on and off based on the electricity prices, but always guided by the optimal growth of plants. And then we use this data to reset our case scenario development. So we compared with the operational expenses of a farm that uses continuous photoperiod with a farm that uses intermittent photoperiod. And we saw a significant reduction between the different months, approximately 20%. Of course, that was really varying because the prices were actually varying of the electricity. That gave us a final saving of 70 euro per square meter per year. And then we developed again the same case cash flow scenarios under the intermittent light that showed a significant reduction of 1 year in the payback period compared to the payback period of 4 years that we had in the vertical farm that was not operating under a reduced load-shifted photoperiodical system. And I would also like to say that when we examine the profitability and the viability of the vertical farm case, even with a wholesale price of 5.37 and 6.37 euro per kilo, the business was still viable with a payback period of 8 and 4 years respectively, but not at a lower price. So concluding, I would like to say that increasing production cost of a vertical farm can highly jeopardize and affect the profitability and the investment payback period of a new and high equipped and automated vertical farm facility. But light is one of the key factors inside the indoor horticulture, and the optimization of the light cycles could lead to significant reductions in the energy operational expenses, in the energy efficiency, and improvements in the crop's yield. We can achieve a 20 to 25% reduction by using an intermittent photoperiod, of course, adjusting it to different LEDs, different technology, and different crops. But also, with this methodology that we developed, we increased approximately 45% the dry shoot biomass production in the basil plants, and a cultivation in an indoor control environment under the reduced intermittent light photoperiod showed a positive effect on the growth, on the development, and the yield of basil plants compared to the continuous light. And finally, I would like to say that Danish and in general Nordic's fluctuating grid could offer a high efficiency, flexibility, and sustainability for indoor food production in the urban areas. And the incorporated demand application from vertical farms will allow adjustments in the flexibility by avoiding the unnecessary production costs and ultimately promote a smarter urban food production environment. Also, at a large-scale deployment of vertical farms, that could be translated to million tons of CO2 savings in the urban environment around the world, while provide at the same time fresh, nutritious, and locally grown herbs and vegetables. And finally, the implementation of vertical farms in the urban areas could be used as an alternative revenue stream for renewable energy application projects via supporting and offering high flexibility to the energy grid by connecting the electricity markets with the controlled local food production systems under a new energy food nexus era. Thank you very much. I stopped sharing my screen by mistake. I also
Yes,
have
Dr. Daphne, you have stopped sharing. Yes.
Okay, I also can give you my contact details for sending me an email, and I want to thank you very much.
Right. Daphne, I think you'll have to escape your presentation. I can still see it on the side. You'll have to stop. Yeah, perfect now. Great. So thank you so much, Dr. Daphne, for sharing your insights. Moving forward, I would like to invite Dr. Eric W. Steen. He is the founder and executive director of the Center of Excellence for Indoor Agriculture. The topic is quite interesting. A lot of attendees will definitely have their questions answered here from the previous sessions. So over to you, Dr. Eric.
Great. Can you hear me okay?
Very well.
Perfect. I'll screen share. And hopefully you can see that okay. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
No, we cannot yet.
Dr. Eric, it's not visible.
Hold on. Try it again. Can you see it now?
No.
Okay. It tells me I'm sharing the screen, so I'm not sure why.
I'm back. Am I audible?
Is it showing up now?
No, Dr. Eric, not yet. Let's do one thing. Rishta, Dr. Eric, did you try the screen share button once again with Rishta at the backstage?
Yes. I mean, I've done this several times. I do this all the time, so I don't know why this is not doing what it's
Not
supposed
an
to do.
issue. I would suggest that you could probably reboot the platform. I have no idea why, because it was working pretty well. Meanwhile, we'll move forward with the next speaker, and
No problem.
not a problem. Okay.
Do you want me to meet you backstage?
Yes, Rishda is there at the backstage for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And to
Most
be
welcome,
continued.
Doctor. To be continued, definitely.
There we go.
Moving forward with the event, I would now like to invite Mark Oshima. He is the co-founder and CMO of AeroFarms, speaking about taking vertical farming to new heights. Mark, I think Mark is missing. I would request the attendees to put down their questions under the Q&A tab to be answered shortly, and to network under the VIP lounge for the speakers. If you have any particular questions, you can proceed to the VIP section to interact and share the presentations from the speakers. Welcome, Mark Oshima. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing good. So once again, everyone, welcoming our speaker of the session. Mark Oshima is the co-founder and CMO of AeroFarms, where the gentleman will be enlightening us about taking vertical farming to new heights. Over to you now, Mark.
All right, thank you. I'll start to share my screen as well. 1 second. Okay, so excited to be able to join you and think about some of the work we're doing here at AeroFarms. as was
Sorry,
shared.
am I interrupting you in between? I do not see the screen share for you. I do not see the alternative screen. Have you screen shared it?
I have. So maybe this is the same situation with like we just had with Eric.
Okay.
And we tested it back in the speaker lounge as well. So
Okay. Did you share the entire screen option while the screen share?
yeah, and then I went into presentation mode as well, right?
Okay, you would have to click on the blue button which says share at the bottom of the pop-up box.
What? And is that working now?
Let me see. Not yet. Nothing at all. When you click on the screen share button, the third icon, a pop-up box appears white which says entire screen. You select the image of your laptop which is down by clicking on it, and the button down below turns blue, and you click on that blue button which says share finally. Should work that way, I think.
Yeah, and it indicates it's sharing my screen right now.
Okay. Surprisingly, we don't have the access.
Yeah, it just was working in the backstage as well. So one second. Let me try again. Is that working any differently, or is that the same?
No, it's still the same, Eric. We are in 4 quadrants. We do not see the screen share. Was it working well at the backstage for you?
It was, yeah.
Okay, it should be working quite smooth here then as well, just like how it was for other speakers. I would suggest you quickly to reboot your system for one last time under the second icon on the top, which says troubleshoot. When you click on it, there will be a reboot option, and I'm sure then your presentation should work out. There is an icon on the top.
Yeah, okay.
Which looks like a screwdriver. To all the attendees, once again, today is the last day of the Global Vertical Farming Expo 2021, organized by TAP Group. I would request each one of you to make the most out of the networking sessions. We're about to end the show in the next 1.5 hours, where we are going to have the VIP roundtable, and some of the crucial questions from the 2 days will be picked up. So go forward and network the most between the booth sections, the VIP, the Q&A section. We should have our speakers shortly over here, Dr. Eric and Mark Shima, because we're very close to the session ending, and we'll have some enlightening information from their side. Meanwhile, make the most of the platform. So while we get back to the the Q&A section, since Eric and Dr. Ushan is not present over here, Ralph, there were some questions for you. Let's pick up the Q&A questions so we don't miss out the Q&A between. We have a few questions for Ralph. Welcome back, Dr. Eric.
Hi, I think I've sent the information to Rushda, so we're going to see if she can drive the presentation for me.
I think that's quite reasonable, and we'll pick that up. Meanwhile, while Rushda is here, Ralph, a question from the audience is that is the germination for treated seeds, different from the greenhouse light, or better on the vertical farming? The lighting in the vertical farming is better than the natural light in greenhouse.
I think it's a really interesting question. I noticed Adelice's picture has just popped up on my screen. It's probably better for her to answer. We treat the seeds to boost the germination and give it the best chance. But actually what happens next, of course, is that some seeds like to be in the dark to germinate. Some seeds like to have some frost to jolt them out of hibernation. Some seeds actually like particularly high levels of ultraviolet to germinate. So it's a real mix of things, and it really comes down to the lighting and how you match that to the seed. Now, it might be that a traditional greenhouse, given the right weather, might be able to get the right combination. But the fact you can have so much more control with a vertical farm, I think would mean that normally you'd expect the vertical farm to win on that front. Can I pass that over to Ellis to maybe flesh
Of
that
course,
answer out?
I would want Alice because that was the main agenda of the Philips. So, Alice, over to you if you can contribute to this question.
Yes, sorry, I was playing around with my
That's great.
screen, but there you
That's
are
great.
again.
The question was about which light was, more effective, the lights in the greenhouse, the natural light, or the lighting in a vertical farming. What is the difference towards the plants in this regard?
Yeah. And then you mean the artificial light in the greenhouse, so LED lighting or HID. Yeah, it's not about being better. It's all about being more equipped to the job. So if you look at the LED lighting used in greenhouses, that's predominantly to extend, for instance, the day length, depending on the light level of the location where the greenhouse is built. So it's often about extending the day length. It can also be to increase the light level during the day, because on a cloudy day, there is not enough light from the sun. So then it's really complementary. But I think where it is actually extending the sunshine is the moment you place it in between the crops. And that's, for instance, what we do with our interlighting, where we can actually place the LED lighting in between the tomato plants so that you can lit exactly those locations where the fruit is being produced. So in that sense, it really depends on what the objective is, what you're looking for. And if you look at an indoor farm, of course, that's completely artificial. But in all honesty, it's the same LED. The spectrum might change, the light level might change, but the process of photosynthesis is the same. You try to steer and increase yield as much as possible. So it's not about choosing between the right light. I think it's about choosing for the right application, looking at your crops, looking at your geographical location, and making use as much as possible from sunlight if it's feasible, of course.
Right. So I think that was a very, a very informative, reply that you've given. I hope the attendees, have the right view about this question now. Moving forward, I would, let's go forward with Dr. Eric Stein's presentation. My colleague Afshin is going to collaborate here with Dr. Eric's presentation.
Wonderful.
Yes. I just want to, inform that Dr. Eric is going to give the presentation now. So the stage is not yours now.
Thank you so much. And despite all our technical difficulties, it's great to be here. And thank you again. If you go to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. So again, thanks to all of you for bringing this together. I know you've worked hard to put this together, and thank you very much. Next slide, please. So I'm going to, did we skip? Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the center that I'm a part of. I want to go over some definitions. I'm an academic by training, so I often start with definitions and talk a little bit about what I think are the keys to sustainable farming and talk about solutions to that. Next slide, please. My background is I'm the executive director of the Center of Excellence for Indoor Agriculture. We're in southeastern Pennsylvania, just outside Philadelphia. I'm also a tenured associate professor of management science and information systems at Penn State. But I've gotten into this field over the last several years, probably 7-8 years ago. I was introduced to this. A friend of mine at NASA looked up at a skyscraper and said that could be filled with greens. So I got very interested in this topic, and I have a small R&D indoor vertical farm to look at the economics around this, and also have done research and published in this area now. Next slide, please. The mission of the center is to accelerate the global transition to indoor farming production methods that are safe and sustainable, and to empower indoor and vertical farmers with knowledge, tools, and resources to build profitable businesses. What really, I teach sustainability. I also teach new ventures, entrepreneurship, and I really became interested in, how this could be a viable option for certain startups and opportunities. I think it addresses a lot of social challenges in inner cities, food deserts, and so on. It's an opportunity for jobs. We also have an aging workforce in the farm industry, and I think this addresses that as well. So it's a way to bring fresh blood in. So for a variety of reasons, I found this to be a very attractive industry that I wanted to do both practical and applied work in. Next slide. So next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, there we go. So just a few definitions, because I've used the word sustainability. What we mean by sustainability is usually framed in what we call the triple bottom line. Triple bottom line is profit, planet, and people for short. When we talk about profit, all businesses have to create a profit in order to stay in business, right? You can't do good in the world unless you stay in business. We have the thing called a B certification, which is part of, which helps consumers understand what kind of businesses are kind of part of the triple bottom line. I know Mark Oshima's business, AeroFarms, is one of those. Planet is the second one, is how effectively we do use resources. And third is people. How do we treat the people in who work in these farms and so on? What's interesting to me is that, and I'll talk more about, is that, planet and profit really, really go together, as well as people, but especially if you use materials and resources wisely, that saves money, which increases your bottom line in terms of your profit side, but it also is more sustainable. So there's a nice synergy there as well. Next slide, please. The second piece here is that I've been, and we are very interested in the operations management side of indoor farms. Operations management is an area of management concerned with overseeing, designing, controlling the processes of production. So I'm really interested in, this is where the magic takes place. How are these farms operating? And really the key to profitability is, as you heard in the previous presentation, which I thought was excellent, was, you see that labor and energy are the two fundamental pieces to that, as well as materials. So how we design our management systems, our operations, to be most efficient is really critical. Next slide, please. And then to make them more efficient, we need metrics. Metrics are quantitative measures that are used for assessing, comparing, and tracking performance or production. We sometimes refer to those as KPI, which are key performance indicators. And so these are essential for, hold on a second. No, that's all right. You can go to the next one, please. So these are essential for building indoor sustainable farms. Now, this is just kind of a value chain look at an indoor farm. You can see at the left side, inputs, energy, water, land, space, and then supplies, raw materials, production, in this case would be the farm production, but then there's also distribution, to the consumer, and then we have end of life, of products as well as waste and so on. There are certain externalities that are produced. Hold on a second. And then these have social impact. So sustainability kind of can permeate the whole value chain, but especially in this intersection, which is the operations management piece. Okay, next slide, please. So to begin with, one of the key metrics, or one of the key sets of design decisions that have to be made are on the facility design, and this includes the size of the space, how the building is structured, the building envelope, how it's insulated, for example, how the facility, the heating, ventilation, and cooling is established, the sources of energy. There's very nice pairing between renewable energies, solar, geothermal, and indoor farms that I think needs further exploration. The actual layout, I think, is critical to look at optimal use of space. And then the production system architecture is a critical decision. So if you go to the next slide, please. So we have many choices, right? From the A-frames, which are sometimes used in the tropics in greenhouses, to the indoor stacked systems, to the tower type systems, to the single level hydroponic systems in greenhouses. All of these are forms of indoor farming that are that we have to make some design choices around. Next slide, please. So there are some key metrics, I think, around the use of space. We can ask questions: what is the total land required? What is the building footprint? What is the footprint of production within that building? But then this is where I think it's really critical and for farms to be very transparent about what is the total area of illumination. That is, what's the illuminated area within that relative to the footprint of the production, right? So that's either, in a greenhouse would be just the footprint of the at single level, but if you're in multiple stacked systems, then you're looking at the total area of illumination there. And then I think it's important to look at some of the metrics around what is the percentage of production in foot squared versus some of these other measures. We also need to, in terms of key facility design, look at, energy sources, non-renewable, renewable, and passive. I think a lot can be done with design. So that's another piece here. And then, of course, the way the HVAC is designed, the heating, ventilation, and cooling, these are all critical, as was mentioned earlier in one of the presentations, that lights produce quite a bit of heat, and that has to be taken into account. So really, these are highly engineered environments that have to be, that mistakes of the binning can really cascade into much higher operating cost down the line. Next slide, please. So our key metric, of course, is yields. Our most raw, significant metric here is yields. We can count these in terms of either the number of plants per square foot, the number of plants per year, pounds per year. In the end, you really want to look at what you're producing over some sort of time cycle, and that becomes your kind of metric that you will now use for other to compare other metrics. So that's a critical metric, and it's and we have to be more precise too. What do we mean by gross yields, net yields? Some of it is going to be substandard. So, but in the end, we're looking at net yields for a given, say, facility. Next slide, please. So our key input metrics are going to be energy, labor, and water. Again, in previous presentations, we heard a little bit about that. But energy and labor are going to consume about 3/4 of your operating costs. Water is is actually one of the success stories from an environmental perspective of indoor farms. They use far less water than other systems. But I think we also have to create metrics around, and utilize the metrics for our performance and improvement, kilowatts per pound, kilowatts per foot square, how much labor in terms of hours or FTEs per pound or foot squared, and how much water we're using. Next slide, please. Obviously, lighting has specialized. I'm not going to get into. It's already been covered. Specialized lighting metrics are important. I'll just draw your attention to the ppf is kind of the raw output of the micromoles per second and that's an important metric. But equally important is the PPE. What is the photosynthetic photon efficiency? That is, how efficiently does a lamp convert energy into photosynthetic light. So that's important. Some manufacturers will also give you the PPFD, which is the light that's distributed over an area. The problem with that is that sometimes those test setups are a little bit different from manufacturer to manufacturer. So really the most effective comparator is really the PPE, and of course some of the other ones. Input power is obvious. And we kind of balance those against the lifetime, would be the recovery value, the price, and then some of the other features that you would find, which would be, whether it's dimmable and warranties and so on and so forth. So that's a whole area of their own metrics, but they're critical. Next slide, please. And then, of course, we have key output metrics around waste, solid waste that's produced in terms of biomass from the plants, as well as the liquid gray water waste that has to be reclaimed in some fashion. And so, and I think, many farms have developed really nice systems for managing the waste and finding homes for it. Next slide, please. So, I mean, in the end, every farm really wants to have some sort of operations dashboard which looks at the inputs, and this is very simplified, that looks at the inputs and the outputs in consideration of production yields. And so in the end, you want to see, for what you put in, what are you getting out? And that would include both the space required as well as the all the inputs, and what are you getting out at the other sides. And I think we really need to hold ourselves, as farmers accountable for what these outcomes are. And I think it makes us better, more competitive, and hopefully will bring down the price to produce a head of lettuce indoors to what we're pricing at conventional levels. Next slide, please. So there's some some solutions. This is a chapter on solutions. What can we do about this? How can we solve some of these problems? Next slide, please. So third-party evaluations are important. They can serve to assess the efficiency of the technology and production systems. Top-performing companies can be given recognition and awards. We started an awards program this past year, and for that very purpose. Next slide, please. We look at different criteria for the production systems, such as yields, effective use of labor, effective use of energy, effective use of water, lowest capital cost. Next slide, please. And for lighting, we look at spectrum, power factor, energy efficiency, lifetime affordability. And again, we invite all manufacturers to participate in this program. Next slide. These were our 2021 vertical farm equipment manufacturer and lighting fixtures. Again, this is was our first year doing this. We recognize these three companies for their work in this area, but we hope we'll get more entrants, and you can go to our website and nominate your favorite company, including your own. Next slide, please. The next piece here, their solution 2, is to collect ongoing data, and that's this is by means we can monitor key variables, we can feed these variables and create KPIs, and then as process improvements are made, we can use these to kind of monitor the efficiency of the action plans. We are now offering a data collection and benchmarking tool that we're just about to release. Next slide, please. Which is a highly detailed technical survey tool for growers to assess operational efficiency and as a component of farm sustainability to help calculate KPIs for inputs, outputs, and so on. And the growers, farms that that use this tool are automatically entered into our annual awards. So again, we invite any farms especially to participate in the use of this, and we're making this available at almost no charge for the first farms that want to participate. Next slide, please. So just to conclude, I'm trying to just move quickly. Next slide, please. So I think sustainable metrics, hopefully you feel that they're important. You're welcome to participate in our program for this new metrics tool that we're offering, and also to nominate companies in the different categories. We'll be running the awards again in the next few months, and just go to our website, indooraggcenter.org, and where you can also follow us on Twitter, sign up for our mailing list to kind of stay in touch. So, again, happy to chat with anybody afterwards on this, and we have a booth here. So, again, thanks for the time, and trying to move quickly because I know we're running out of time.
Right. Yes, thank you, Dr. Eric, for sharing the presentation.
Thank you.
It was really listening to it. You can put up the questions under the Q&A tab to all the attendees. Moving to the last speaker of our session, Mark Oshima. Welcome back, Mark. He is the co-founder and CMO of AeroFarms. Over to you now, Mark, where he will be speaking about vertical farming to new heights.
All right, thanks. Take two as well. And so I'm going to work with Afshin on sharing the presentation. So Afshin, if we could share the screen, that'd be great.
She's coming back, I think. She's sharing it.
Happy to try again. It did work again backstage, but it's one of those.
God knows. We have a lot of presentations, and surprisingly, it's been working. But God knows. That's the thing about virtual events, though. Different people from different time zones, a few glitches here and there. It's trying to pull it off. Just waiting for Afshin, I think.
While we wait, maybe I can try one more time, too.
Let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
I can see your screen. Perfect. You can put that on full screen.
Okay.
Wonderful surprise. Over to you, Mark, then.
All right. That'll make it a little bit easier. But yeah, thank you for the introduction. And yeah, very exciting to hear the other speakers as well. We want to be able to share a little bit about the work we're doing with AeroFarms and the work we've been doing around vertical farming, but also just within the overall industry. And so when we talk about taking vertical farming to new heights, we see tremendous opportunities and the impact we can have in agriculture overall. Won't talk a little bit about the macro issues. I'm sure that's been covered. Really just want to be able to talk a little bit about the company first and do a little bit of setup there. We heard Eric talk about the importance of certifications and something like a certified B Corporation. AeroFarms, we are a mission-driven organization. Our focus is on how do we grow the best plants possible for the betterment of humanity. And we've been one of the pioneers and leaders in this space. We've been doing this since 2004. We'll be the first to tell you that it's not easy to do. It's very complex. And our background, our history here, and appreciate a lot of the focus on what we've been hearing about on the metrics. We very much have taken a very much a science-driven approach. Our Chief Science Officer, Dr. Ed Harwood, had been a professor at Cornell University, one of the top ag programs. And so from day one, we've always had that lens in thinking about, again, how do we measure, how do we replicate, and how do we scale the business. A little bit about the company in terms of our history. Today, our global headquarters, we're in Newark, New Jersey. We're a team of over 220 people. We have operations in the US as well as internationally. And then everything that you see, we've taken a little bit of a different approach. Everything that you see here is technology that we've developed. And I think that's a very unique approach in thinking first about what does the plant need. And so our commercial farms are very much focused on leafy green production. And we'll talk a little bit more about that productivity and background. When we think about the impact we have, it's not only on technology, but it's that impact we can have in terms of transforming communities, this idea of making a connection with the food, where it's grown, how it's grown. It's about increasing access to healthy food, addressing food deserts, but it's also about creating jobs, year-round employment, fair wages, and benefits. So it's been a great relationship and partnership within the communities. There's a big part of the organization that we're doing as well around educating the communities. And so we've actually had community farms that have been in inner city schools right in their dining hall. This is a program that we've actually been scaling. This is a program that we started over 10 years ago in downtown Newark. But we actually are working with the World Economic Forum and their Healthy Cities and Communities Initiative and the city of Jersey City. And so we actually just have started to open up some community farms where we're actually putting the farms right into the communities, more schools, but also senior assisted living centers, community centers, and municipal buildings. And so really thinking differently about how do we can address even that last mile, getting healthy food options to the community. And the Jersey City program is underwritten through a grant, but the product is given out to the community for free. So this is a really incredibly important, particularly during these challenging times with COVID. And so this is an exciting opportunity for us to be able to extend our expertise in growing and thinking about how we can have an impact across the broader community. We talk a little bit about that lens, global headquarters in Newark, New Jersey. We actually are building out in Abu Dhabi a very large R&D facility. It'll be the world's largest, just dedicated for R&D for indoor vertical farming. We've announced plans. We're well underway in Danville, Virginia, but we've also plans in the St. Louis region in terms of the Midwest. and have a very active, healthy, robust pipeline of projects, not only in these regions, but also in other parts of the world. Here's just to give you a little bit of insight in terms of, again, the progress. The Danville farm, actually, the roof is up already. And then here is an image of our farm in Abu Dhabi as well. And so we're thinking about, again, how we can build large-scale commercial farms. To give you a sense, these are over, about 100,000 square feet. In some cases, even 150,000 square feet, growing space and focus on production. We've been thinking about how we help lead the way and really kind of thinking about, again, how do we help capture the imagination. It's really about the technology, the environmental stewardship, but it's also, at the end of the day, we're in the food business. And so, we've won things like Time Best Inventions in the category of food. We're doing things within the produce industry, winning the marketing excellence. So it's about how do we bring a very different value proposition. Very excited in thinking about, again, how do we marry, this unique aspect around technology, how we think about environmental stewardship, how we think about a better product. So just to give you a little bit more insight in terms of when we talk about our growing technology and the work we do. So the Aero and Aero Farms refers to aeroponics. We're the largest commercial growing, focused company around this. The idea with aeroponics, we're actually misting the roots. It can be more targeted in terms of that water. So we think, again, about those macro pressures where 70% of the fresh water is going to agriculture, 70% of the pollution is coming from traditional agriculture. But we also think about, water is our most precious resource. So we can grow with up to 95% less water versus the field and even 40% less than hydroponics. And how? We're actually misting the root, a very targeted nutrient solution. So we're actually using less fertilizer, and it allows us to be able to actually think about a faster growing process. What roots need is oxygen. And so this is actually leading to more biomass in a shorter time period. So for example, for baby leafy greens, that may out in the field take 30 to 45 days to grow, we can actually grow in 12 to 14 days. And so it's just fundamentally thinking about what does the plant need and be able to deliver that. And that's really the thesis when we think about the design in our system. Again, the idea that we've heard a lot about lighting, we actually have our own proprietary lighting as well. We actually have brought all this expertise in-house. So when we talk about thinking about the relationship between system, biology, environment, how to put that together, we have expertise. So even on the lighting, our CTO, Roger Bulow, is actually formerly of GE Lighting and formerly of a publicly traded LED company. So having that expertise in-house allows us to understand the interaction. And then things that we've been pioneering in terms of our growth medium, there's no soil, but we actually have patented cloth, and it's a reusable medium. And so that's really part of that whole circular economy and that design thesis that we have in terms of, again, how do we do more with less? That cloth growing medium is actually made out of recycled water bottles that have been taken out of the waste stream and that are then can be reused as well. So we're constantly thinking about how to do more with less. Less water, no pesticides, and then even thinking about differently about the growing medium. When we talk about there's a symbiotic relationship, you really need expertise in all areas, and it's an interaction. And so this is what we've found that has been really useful for us in terms of understanding. It's this deep understanding around the plant biology. It's understanding our systems, the mechanical design. It's thinking about the environmental an aspect there. The data science, these are fully connected farms, sensors, monitoring, 24/7. Operations at scale. So again, this idea that, I'll give you a sense, our chief operating officer is formerly of Kraft Mondelez, where we've overseen 88 facilities worldwide, over 30,000 employees. To give you a sense of the kind of impact and vision that we have in terms of where we can have an impact. And then we're also doing work on the plant genetics. And this is an exciting area in terms of speed breeding. Our whole thesis is that we can, through phenotyping, really be able to optimize the environment, take any seed and be able to get the expression of different characteristics that we want. But we're working on the next generation of seeds as well that are optimized specifically for indoor growing. And we're doing here some really important work with public partnerships. And this is an important message that we have in terms of the role of public and private partnerships and thinking about how do we accelerate, how do we build a bigger movement here. Here in the U.S., we're working with an organization called the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research. We're part of what's called PIP, Precision Indoor Plants Consortium. And we are the principal investigator for this multinational effort to think about, again, the next generation in seeds and genetics. And it's exciting to be able to think about, again, how do we think about that field farm seed is really thinking about, is it drought resistant? Is it, can it withstand, downy mildew, which are some of the major pressures that you have? Flavor, nutrition have become really tertiary or even further down on that list of, attributes that the seed companies are looking at. And so we can really reimagine, again, bringing that flavor back to the forefront. And we talk about this being like a closed loop system, an iterative process. And so we're talking about continuous learning and the idea that we can enhance and be able to accelerate that learning process. This idea of being able to celebrate biodiversity, we've grown over 550 different types of crops. Many of them have been in the leafy greens, but we've also been growing the vine crops. We've also been growing fruit. And so it's exciting to see about the impact we can have. But what this is important around is really thinking about cultural relevance, geography relevance, and this idea that we can be able to have customized, product offerings and really be able to serve, the different local communities that we operate in. And then when we talk about this idea of flavor and being able to use the science, use this growing process that we have, we can actually change the characteristics. And here's just an example of some different sensory work that we do specifically around taste profiles and changing some of those growing environmental aspects. We can actually change and make something more spicy, make something more sweet. And so it's exciting to be able to think about, again, how do we deliver some uniqueness out in the product from a product differentiation standpoint in the marketplace. This idea of celebrating, the science and bringing it then to the consumer, we've actually have trademarked this concept of called flavor spectrum. There's distinct tasting notes that we have. So, for example, our baby arugula is perfectly peppery. And this idea that we can then deliver this consistently all year round, it's creating a lot of excitement with the consumer. Our customers, our selling partners are excited because around the year-round availability, the consistency, we're able to build the category in a very significant way. And this is really celebrating, again, this history and expertise that we have around creating some really unique product differentiation out there. The idea that we're partnering, with key retailers, again, it's not just the Whole Foods, but we're also selling in Walmart. We're selling at Ahold Delhaize. This is large-scale impact in terms of thinking about, again, how do we democratize access to great tasting food, but be able to think about, again, how does this scale with the right economics? We've heard a lot of focus in terms of, again, what's that right business model? This is an exciting inflection point for us and for the industry. And this idea that we're creating, really uniqueness and differentiation. Our micro broccoli was recognized by Whole Foods for their 2022 Trends Food Forecast, which is really looked at as really the bellwether of what's happening in the industry. Everybody's looking at it in terms of, again, what's next in terms of trends. So we're excited to be able to bring innovation and be able to drive that through the right value proposition, the right product proposition, and the right merchandising presentation as well. The idea that we're partnering with key tastemakers. So again, setting this new culinary standard around that flavor. We work with top chefs like Marcus Samuelsson. We work with top chefs like David Chang, who became so excited he became an investor. And so all of a sudden now that menu planning is starting back at the farm. How can we create some uniqueness and differentiation in terms of, again, that offering? We have a great partnership with Singapore Airlines with the Farm to Plane initiative. But again, this idea that working with these key tastemakers allows us to then think about, again, new varieties, new characteristics that we can help develop. What we really wanted to talk and share with the audience, though, is the approach we've taken from a partnership standpoint. On the technology standpoint, we've had long-standing history with partners like Dell, but we announced new partnerships this year with Nokia Bell Labs that we're doing next-generation imaging. And the idea that with drones, we're actually doing and have the ability to do real-time imaging of the plants and be able to then course correct as needed. So this is allowing us a greater level of precision, control, quality than ever before. And it's exciting to think about, again, how do we leverage and harness technology? And what we talked about in terms of that range of crops, so it's not only on the berries standpoint. For example, we have a partnership with Hoarder Fruit, which is the largest berry company in the world, specifically growing blueberries. We've grown beautiful strawberries as well. But we're really excited about the work we announced with Cargill in growing cacao trees. And here, what's exciting about this as well is that we're looking at specifically around the genetics. How do we create a more resilient plant that then would actually be used out in the field? So this idea that we can work within the broader agriculture is an exciting opportunity for us to think about the kind of impact we want to have. Another area that we want
if we can just wind up the session in a few minutes, please.
Yep, absolutely.
Must
Just a
appreciate it.
couple last slides on closing around the
Sure.
idea of partnerships. We've actually grown hops indoors, the Cascade finishing hops, again, really thinking about those specific flavor profiles, working with AB InBev and Goose Island. This is a product that actually launched in September, and really thinking about this co-branded and messaging opportunity, and thinking about, again, major issues with, again, sourcing on hops out in the field. A lot of the hops are grown here in the U.S. and the Northwest, where we've had tremendous heat issues in the heat dome. And so it's been exciting to work with really progressive partners, like AB InBev and the Cargills of the world to think about a more resilient approach. And so that's really one of the key messages that we have in terms of, again, how can we potentially partner within the broader ecospace. We talked about, we built out AgX, which is our R&D facility in Abu Dhabi. And that's just for R&D purposes. So we welcome for people to reach out and see how we can work together. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mark. That was quite a very, interesting presentation, the kind of partnerships and the detailed information about aerofarms. Much appreciated. Thank you so much, everyone, the speakers of Session 7 for participating in the Global Vertical Farming Expo. It's time to start the VIP session round. Moving forward, thanks again to each and every one present over here. Pleasure meeting each one of you. Have a very good day ahead. The networking is open for the booths and the VIP panelists. Go ahead and make the most out of the last day of the Global Vertical Farming Expo. Take care.
Thank you.